Nice to see you again. Good morning to the Americas. Good afternoon to Europe and Africa and the Middle East. Good evening to Asia and Australia. I kind of forgot Antarctica, but that's like every time zone, I think, right? Really looking forward to this morning's panel. You know, there's been this sort of like catchphrase in the space for a long time, which is the future is remote. And I think at the end of the day, Hassan, welcome. Really looking forward. Make sure that you turn down the volume. There you go. Welcome, Hassan, as well. There's been this catchphrase, the future is remote. But now we're realizing that that's not necessarily true. The future is hybrid. Rachel Lanham, the Chief Customer Officer at Voodle, will be the moderator of this panel, along with, again, a really esteemed group. Hassan Oman from Cisco, Davit Baghdasaryan, the co-founder and CEO at Crisp, Kuppulakshmi Krishnamoorthy, the global head at Zoho for startups. Rachel, it just is, it's so poignant and yet so accurate, I think, what we'll hear from this group, that the future really is hybrid for many companies.
Yeah, I think we were talking as a panel about how, you know, obviously COVID got us all suddenly remote if we weren't already. And so it was like, let's survive this. And then it was like, okay, I guess we'll be all remote forever. And I think now, you know, 8-9 months in, it's like, okay, what's reality setting in? And it's, you know, what is the right blend of remote and, you know, office life?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the questions I do want to ask is, I mean, look, we have really interesting minds from big companies like Cisco and Zoho. Like, will this focus be more on the larger corporations, or will you look at it in terms of a balance between what the big players are doing and maybe what some of the smaller startups are doing as well?
Yeah, that's what kind of got us excited once we all came together, is that there's really this spectrum from, I think it's 75,000 or what's, you know, Cisco's this massive company, Zoho's more in the 8,000 range, Davit's more in the 100. And then Voodle's brand new, we have 16 people. So this whole breadth of what does this mean for companies of different sizes? So we actually noticed that same thing and thought this is a really great opportunity to say, well, what does that mean when you're just starting out and, you know, as kind of a baby, and then when you're more an adult and you've always been distributed, but now there's all these aha moments we're getting during COVID.
Right, absolutely. It's a brilliant panel. I'm going to get out of the way, Rachel. The floor is yours, okay? Well, I'll see you a little bit later for Q&A.
Okay, great. We may be missing one panelist, or I only see two.
Yeah, started. You know, you guys have this stuff working.
Wonderful. Okay, let's get going. As Danny said, this is a really exciting topic and of the moment. It seems like in the press lately, there's just a lot of talk about hybrid digital workplaces where physical and remote can coexist, and what, you know, when the pandemic hopefully subsides, we're going to be in this new future. We can't really put the genie back in the bottle and forget what we've learned. So we're really excited about the future is hybrid as a topic. And as Danny said, I'm really fortunate to have this fantastic panel of experts here that work for companies not only that are living through this and working in a hybrid manner, but also provide solutions for hybrid workers and hybrid teams to make that as successful and you know, enjoyable, I guess, as possible. So it's great to have everybody here. We'll just start with introductions. I see we have everybody now, yay. So Kapu, maybe starting with you, if you want to introduce yourself and your company and role, and then a little bit about where Zoho sees itself in the hybrid work, ecosystem, and then we'll hit Davit and then Hassan.
Sure, thanks, Rachel. So Vanakkam, I am Kupu from Chennai, India, and I'm so happy to be part of this panel talking about the topic right now about the hybrid model of working in the future. I right now head the startups program at Zoho, where we connect with incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, government bodies, and we help the startups onboard the software applications that we create and sell from Zoho. And I have been associated with Zoho for over 10 years now, but it feels like a lifetime because you live every day very intensely. So this particular panel is quite on point for me because in general, you could say, like in the famous movie Mummy, what is a place like me doing in a girl like this? So I'm quite misplaced because I'm actually a microbiologist. I have an MSc, a master's degree in industrial microbiology. But then the story of how I landed in Zoho as a soft skills trainer, training people on cross-culture, understanding how customers from across the globe function and what they talk about. How do you simplify the language, remove all the jargons, but not make software look so stupid where it's not really a child's play? So somewhere walking the tightrope, I really didn't know how 10 years just went by. And today I talk to a lot of people across the globe who onboard software in really unique fashion. And that gives me a lot of insight towards how technology is actually bridging the gap of bringing people together, is in making their life easy. What can we do from Zoho to enable them or empower them some more via our software applications? So Zoho has been around for 24 years now, and recently we crossed the milestone of 50 million users from across the globe using several of our apps, and we have offices across the globe. Now, what makes this panel more interesting to me is that when the pandemic hit, we already were working in a kind of hybrid model where I, as a person, a lot of times I have spent my days outside of work because my daughter's school is right around the corner, right outside work. Sometimes I can see her playing in the ground right through my office window. So which means I have spent time managing my car wash or attending a parent-teachers meeting, doing all that home stuff while at work, but then come back home, or when you're traveling, you just open your laptop, use several of our apps and work on the go. So in several ways, the flexibility was there. The hierarchy is flat. It kind of trickles down from the top. So when the pandemic hit earlier this year, we took just 3 days to put our BCPs, the business continuity plans, in place. And 8,000 of us employees, over just 3 days of time, we all moved 100% remote. So I'm quite excited to share some of the lessons and experiences we learned during this process, where we are handling a lot of customer data day in, day out. And how do we keep this conversation transparent and help users retain the trust they have in us as an organization, and what the leadership does day in, day out to keep this culture and work ethics going. So I'm super excited also to hear from Hassan and David today. And over to you, Rachel.
Great. Davit, why don't you go next?
Sure, thanks. Well, it's great to be on this panel. Well, I'm Davit, CEO and co-founder at Crisp. Crisp is an app that removes background noise and echo in meetings like Zoom, Teams, Meet, and the one like this, that hoping. So it comes quite handy for people who work from home, from Starbucks, and any other potentially noisy place, right? So our team is distributed between US and Armenia. I'm currently in Armenia. And as many other companies, we have gone through everyone in office, right, set up, and like to fully remote experience. And we are still learning the pros and cons of both. And in this comparably short time, we have also ran some very interesting experiments, which I'm happy to share you with about. So looking forward to it. Rachel.
Great. Hassan, you're up.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Very excited to be here, and great to catch up with you, Kupu, and Davit and Rachel. So my name is Hassan Osman. I am a PMO director at Cisco Systems. I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts. So we're getting the cold weather in right now. And I lead a team in the Americas across the US, Canada, and Latin America on delivering large and complex deals. And all of that team is virtual. That's pretty much my day job. My nighttime job and weekend job is I'm an author of short books for busy managers. And one of the books that has caught up since COVID is Influencing Virtual Teams. So I've been working with virtual teams and remote teams for quite a while now, and I'm really excited to be on this panel. So I can just touch upon the question you asked, Rachel, which is how a solution fits into sort of the hybrid ecosystem. And I could give you my experience at Cisco. So just like Kupu, I've been at Cisco for 10 years. And I have to mention that views are my own and not those of Cisco. So I'll just give you my own experience. And, you know, the company has been really sold on remote work and the hybrid model ever since I joined 10 years ago. So as you probably know, Cisco sells a lot of services and products and solutions for teleworking. And we're really been some of the pioneers in the space. And I've been working in this hybrid model since 2010. An interesting story is when I joined the company, I interviewed with 7 people. And only one of them was live. The rest were over the phone. Back then, video was not very popular. And that person who I interviewed with live left the company after maybe a couple of months. So I ended up working for maybe a year and a half virtually, just on the phone, not using video with my entire team. And I had no clue how anyone looked like. Even my manager, right? I used to say and joke that if I bump into my manager at a Starbucks or at an airport, I wouldn't know that this is the person I've been talking to nearly every day for the past year and a half. So, you know, when COVID hit and we were sort of forced into this model, from my perspective, it was just another Tuesday, right? It was just another day at work. And really the only big disruption was the fact, just like Kupu with the kids, is that I had to deal with 2 little girls sitting at home doing their work remotely as well. But really looking forward to this, and back to you, Rachel.
Fantastic. Well, I guess the audience can see why I was so excited about this group of panelists. A little bit about me, Chief Customer Officer at Voodle. We just launched a few months ago. We provide a short asynchronous video platform, really purpose-built for remote teams. It was completely built during the COVID era, in fact. And it's sort of like the power of async communication like you get with Slack, but video. So maybe if Slack and TikTok had a baby, they might have Voodle. And so we're big on unlocking the power of async video so organizations can really realize the efficiency, but still get the benefits of video. So let's get to it. When we got together, you know, there's so much to talk about here, but there were a couple themes that we really honed in on as a team of what would be interesting to talk about and where these companies and perspectives that you guys just heard about really could, you know, bring a good discussion. And the first one is that we focused on is really around where work happens. You know, we hear work from anywhere, you know, work remote, work from home. There's all of these phrases, but where does work happen? And work kind of used to be a place. It was a place that you went, and now it's a kind of a purpose and a thing that happens. And so office as a business center, you know, all those things are really changing. And so the first topic really is just about where work happens. So Davit, maybe let's start with you, and you could talk about Chris' approach on where work gets done, the evolving role of the office, and you have some really cool things going on that you shared with me that I'm excited for you to share with the group on how Chris is thinking about the where of work.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rachel. Well, I think that our initial experience was like for anyone else, right? Like after moving fully remote, the team was quite happy and productive. Everything was fine. And then, but after some time, some of our people started going back to office, and they were really missing in-person interactions, you know, brainstormings and coffee breaks and so on. So after some time, we realized that hybrid is a better solution. It's just, you know, that's how the world works, right? I personally like to go to office sometimes. I have kids at home, and I like to run away from them. Like, and it's very depressive to stay home all the time. And I can imagine there are many folks like that. So and after communicating that to the team, you know, like a week after that, Google announces that the work is going to be hybrid. So we felt like really proud of that. So we are faster than them. Anyway, so like we have really tried different things, and like one of the things that I'm very proud of, we call it working from forest, right? The idea is to send a group of people to work from forest, as it says. So we partner with a local company here who was organizing it all. So they would provide power, internet, tables, food, etc. And people would start early in the morning, drive an hour on a bus, and start working from there, from open air. So they would their meetings, they would focus on their work, and at some point they would go and do hiking, right, in the nature. And at the end, some people would come back, at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and some would just stay longer there. They would do campfire, play guitar, sing songs. So that was, everyone was, felt very happy about this. So this was a very successful initiative. We are not doing it anymore because of the weather, right? But we certainly gonna restart that when the weather becomes better next year. So the other thing that we did and we are doing right now very actively is, our team has grown twice during COVID time, and we had a small office that would fit us, but then like as the team grows, the question is, what do you do with the office, right? Like we were like the traditional answer would be like, rent a bigger place, like a headquarter that you would have. But then like it just doesn't make sense for hybrid, right? Because like you don't even know how many people are going to show up if you have a big place. So we have been thinking about that, and the solution we came up with, we are calling it distributed office, okay, or distributed offices. So imagine a company having multiple offices, and I'm not talking about Cisco, obviously, right? I'm talking about like some small company, and that's very new for us, right? A company having multiple offices, each fitting like 20 people only, like same design, like same branding, same usability, spread in different places within the same city. Okay, it's like WeWork, but it's our offices. Okay. So in Yerevan, in Armenia, we already have two such offices in different locations. And the benefit of this, there are two benefits. It's the commute, right? So you, depending where you live in the city, you can choose to which office to go and avoid traffic and everything. And it sort of gives you more diverse environment, right? Like if you want to work from here today, and then maybe next day you want to work from home, and then next day from the other office. So the offices are shared, like they're shared desks, right? You go and you book a desk, and everyone sees that you're going to be in that office. And if there is another person who want to talk, brainstorm with you on some topic in person, they will see it and they will come to office. Or if they don't want to see you, they won't come there, right? So both sides. Yeah, I mean, it's those are the two experiments that we have done, and we are actually going to do this. So I think we are going to end up having like 3-4 offices in this city, and take this to other countries as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, work from forest and distributed offices, very cool. Kupu, Zoho, was already obviously making a lot of big changes in this area even before the pandemic. With your CEO kind of walking the walk of really flexible ways of where work can get done. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's quite fun because
you might be muted. There you go.
Okay, am I audible? Good. All right. So it's been fun because right now what the CEO is doing, we get to know via Twitter or how he's been making some splash in the news. So the latest photo of him is him in a dhoti, that is a traditional attire down south here in India, and he's driving an electric auto. So for us, the thought process of work from anywhere originates from a kind of combination of who we are and why we are doing what we are to do with your personality, right? Who you are, what kind of experiences that you've gathered so far in your life. So from, when I look back of how Zoho has evolved, I remember when I joined, we were just 1,500 people, and we've grown to 8,000 people, and we have offices across the globe. So right from the beginning, the leadership team, or Mr. Sridhavembu, the CEO, the message that they have been constantly giving us is that, why do you come to work? What does wealth mean to you? What does success mean to you? What is the purpose of the Simon Sinek's golden why, the circle, what you do and how you do what you do and all of that. So the kind of philosophy that weaves into your work every day was always visible. From the CEO to the top leadership, they walk the talk. Now during the pandemic, we see that many of our colleagues had to go back to their hometowns, smaller than Chennai as a metropolitan city. And the idea was to weave a hybrid model that helped all of us use our wealth and not really spend on long commutes or beating pollution or increasing road traffic or accidents. So the idea was already to not increase the real estate value of even the place where we call office. So we all started going back to our roots in one way, where the culture of our organization was very important for us. So you would have known Zoho has remained bootstrapped for this one primary reason, also because we want to keep our culture intact. So the values and principles and all the philosophy that makes Zoho work, that where software is a craft, you have to have people in their real authentic self. And where can it happen other than in your hometown, where you're either connected with fields, or you are very close to where your food is grown, or you have your childhood memories. You kind of walk down the memory lane every day, and you start wondering the bigger purpose in life. Okay, I'm here perhaps making rich people richer by giving them software. But then how can I do to another spectrum of people who also can make use of the knowledge that we've gained, the wealth that we have accumulated? So today we have opened a lot of rural offices, and the CEO himself works from a tiny, quaint village down south. He walks, he plays cricket, he teaches the rural kids there because he believes in them having access to education as well. So even as employees, when we were working in the Chennai office, there's one huge bucket-like building that didn't have any life. We moved a lot of trees, inside the office. We created space that could bring out essentially who we are, than getting stuck in fancy offices or beanbags or something that we couldn't really relate to. So the aesthetics was very, very important, that got weaved into our culture and our work. It kind of shows in the quality of work, the software that we produce every day. So it's quite inspiring, where you start traveling this path of sustainable living, and you also bring back how software can be emotionally intelligent, where it doesn't talk down to people. And then you also always manage both sides of the spectrum, where either is an enterprise that's buying our software, or that is a really small office people who don't even know how to onboard a bunch of software applications. You know how to talk to them and what kind of marketing that needs to be done. So I think this, all of this running remote and hybrid is helping make software not just smart, but more and more human. You can't really accelerate and create a future where many of us get left behind, and then we walk forward, leaving them behind. So it's all coming together, and for me, it's quite emotional to live through this time, because you see several intersections of this happening like never before. So you get to go through this every day. A lot of insights. You feel like you are ready to write a book and share some of the wisdom that you gained to the world. I hope I answered your question.
No, I love this idea of authenticity, and kind of bringing your whole self to work and really bringing that to life, even with the place. So Hassan, you've done a lot of thinking about the type of work that can happen anywhere versus in an office or a collaboration space. So we'd love to hear your perspective on this, this topic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And my thought on this, Rachel and team, is when you're considering a hybrid model, you really want to put the effort to think about what are the functions or tasks that you want your team to do when you are on site, right? When you are in that face-to-face setting, what are the things, the activities that can be easily done remotely, and what are the things you want to take advantage of and are better served in a face-to-face setting? And really, the idea is to maximize the return on investment of this hybrid model, right? The whole idea is that, okay, if you are not going to be working 100% from home or 100% from the office or from the forest, then you want to think about this hybrid model and think about, how do I maximize the time that people spend together? Because the last thing you want to do is, commute an hour and a half into the office and then be on a WebEx meetings or a Zoom call there, right? When you can do it from home. So a couple of things to think about are, one is team building activities. To me, this is really, really important that when you do spend the time to get the team together, that you actually think about some sort of fun activities that build that team cohesion and intimacy that's really important for trust formation and bonding, right? So that's one thing that I think definitely maximizes the ROI. But then, of course, you also want to think about the tasks, the work tasks that you want to do there. And the best tasks that are done face-to-face are those that require some sort of brainstorming or creative thinking, right? With remote work, for example, it's usually very transactional. If you're, heads down coding, for example, that makes a lot of sense to do in a remote setting because you do need the silence, you do need the distraction-free zone. But then when you're together, anything related to like whiteboarding or creativity or brainstorming, those are the tasks that you want to start thinking about doing on site. So that's sort of the way I recommend you thinking about it. And with that, over to you.
Yeah, great. Well, the theme there, you think it wouldn't be so diverse and creative in terms of what this means of where work happens, but it really is. And I think it's kind of like true to a company's DNA. They're going to chart their own territory of what, hybrid means. So I think that was a really interesting conversation. And I still am obsessed with working from the forest. Okay, so next topic that we'll move into is around the right tools. Having the right technology stack and teaching your team to use it properly, having the rules of the road seems to be one of the most important steps towards, really being, having a great, flexible work policy for your company. And having, building that trust as well, it kind of, comes to life in the tools. So I'd love for everybody to talk about some of the tools they've adopted during this time that have been kind of game changers for their hybrid working. And it's also opportunity to talk about, the own tools that that you provide. So maybe Kuppu, we could start with you. What's the tool stack, kind of the essential communication and collaboration tool stack over at Zoho?
Sure, Rachel. This is a question that can flesh out into an entire presentation for me because that's what I do day in, day out. Talking to the startups right from their early stage to those startups that have grown across geographical boundaries using this pandemic as the positive side effect of that. In Zoho, when I joined back in early 2010, we just had a handful of apps basically to communicate. There was a basic Zoho mail, that was kind of evolving. Today we have a full stack of 45 plus applications with complementary mobile apps. And because I'm from a microbiology background, I can say it with more authority, where a lot of times when you're onboarding the software, this is like walking into a restaurant. If I'm pretty much food or right out of the kitchen, imagine entering into a fine dining space and then there's really fancy names written and you have a dress code and it's kind of overwhelming which is otherwise the pleasure of eating food. Software is a lot like that, where you can't really make it look really silly, or at the same time you can't throw in all the jargons just in order to make it look smart. So during this time of evolution of Zoho as an organization, when we were growing ourselves, we realized the gap that was there in the industry, where software, first of all, is trustworthy, where users' data or your data is not unnecessarily used, or there are not a lot of ads. Number two, you put together these applications, and what is the point if they're not talking to each other or tightly integrated? So we worked heavily on integrations where your sales and marketing apps pretty much are connected to your project management app, or any of the new emails that you get via your Zoho mail is connected to your customer relationship management tool. So right from sales and marketing to communication and collaboration, for our own needs, we started putting features together, and before we knew it was full-length functional apps. So you put in a little bit of culture and work ethics there, where software can be made affordable. Software can be used by people across various industries and organizations of different size. Zoho runs on Zoho. So day in, day out, we become the kind of testing tools. Just in case something is released in beta version, we are the first to run through it so that our customers don't have to undergo the pain points. We also have a lot of certified partners situated across the globe's more than 75 countries that help in understanding how locally some of our apps can be used based on the industry that's thriving, or the trend that's coming up, or some of the government-related problems that we can solve. So during this pandemic, our tools and the customers have helped us learn a lot of stuff on innovation, how technology can be. It's quite different when you go and present on how you want to use it, but when you start using it every day, it's completely different ball game. So we've learned a lot introducing these 45 plus apps. What we've also done during this time is, in order for those businesses to thrive, with bare minimum, we've come up with new schemes where for a certain period of time, the businesses don't have to pay for some of the apps that we gave away for free. So we help them thrive during this time. And I'm quite proud to be part of the organization that always puts people first. The processes and the product comes in equally, but the quality and the human first element is something I love about this organization.
That's great. Hassan, how about you? Obviously, WebEx and your suite of tools are, purpose-built for this scenario, but, I'd love to hear your perspective on, the right tool set and how to think about that with hybrid teams, what the kind of the philosophy around it should be.
Yeah, so you said it right, Rachel. I'm a bit biased. Obviously, I work for Cisco, and I'm a big proponent of the technology that we sell, including WebEx meetings, WebEx calling for cloud calling, and WebEx Teams for collaborating. So we obviously use those tools internally, in addition to all the different government agencies and large enterprises around the world. But putting that aside, right? So, looking at it from a technology agnostic aspect and looking at a tool set as one sort of thought process, I always like to start with ensuring that everyone first is comfortable with the basics of the tool stack that they need to use, right? A lot of tools these days, especially with SaaS products, is that they have those bells and whistles that keep getting expanded, right, as a feature set. And so what ends up happening is that they become very overwhelming to some team members, right, who end up defaulting to the basics like email. And so I really think that part of your organization, as you're thinking about adopting a specific technology or tool, that you really focus on making sure that everyone is comfortable with the one-on-one basics of how to use that tool first, right? Because particularly in a hybrid model, when you have people who are collaborating on site versus those who are going to be remote, you have to put the extra effort to consider the fact that you might be communicating locally, verbally basically, and leaving some of your team members out in the dark. And so, making sure that you use the simple things like turning on video, just like we're doing here, in that conference room when you're discussing strategic and important conversations, and making sure that you're inclusive of your team that is remote, right? Those are the team members that are working remotely on that day need to understand what's going on, not just in the room, but also on, for example, the whiteboard, right? A lot of times it's very hard to kind of make sure that they are kept in the loop on that. So that's my general philosophy. Again, focusing on training and looking at the basic tool sets. And then in my mind, less is more, right? Every once in a while, we hear of a new tool and everyone wants to jump on it because it's the latest and sexiest thing out there. But you also have to think about multiple tooling and how that could be affecting your switching costs and overwhelming your employees.
Great. Davit, what does the tool stack look like over in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, well, as compared to Cisco, like we have more flexibility to switch tools, right? It's, you know, we are not focused on cost and switching costs that much. We actually invest a lot in productivity tools. In our company, like we spend like probably like 5% from our total budget, you know, from our total expenses that we have on productivity tools, and that's a lot. So like I personally see tools as a means of giving our team members like superpowers, right? Productivity superpower. So I would like to focus on two things, like information flow and availability of the information. I think it's very quite critical for remote teams, and the companies who figure out how to do this right, they're going to be successful, and the companies that don't are going to fail in remote setup, right? I think it's really important. I think it's really important to pick the right tools that fit your culture. And in the last 9 months, as I mentioned, like our team has grown twice, right, in size, and that's a big jump. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of new people coming in, like new hires that not only haven't seen, like Hassan was mentioning, right? They haven't seen their teammates. They don't have any information like what this company does if things are not written down, right? And as a CEO, like one of my jobs is, like the way I say it, is to ensure that the team communicates well and shares information the information is shared in a perfect flow, right, in the company, and the team has full transparency. So and tooling is the only means that I see that I can use to achieve that. So we do a lot of video calls, but the problem with video calls is that they are, the information shared there is ephemeral, right? Like it lives there in a short time. So it's like one-on-one setup. Like right now, we said something and it's gone. If you are not here, you wouldn't know it. So, but what's reusable? So video is not reusable. What's reusable is written text, right? You write once, and then many people can read it, right? So it's one-to-many relationship. I think it's like a simple concept, but it's to me it's a key concept. So the challenge is how do you make people write? Not ever, like most of the people don't like writing, right? Frankly, I don't know like the precise solution for that. But I noticed one thing is that if the tool you use for writing is delightful, it can invite more people to do that, to write. So one such tool that I sort of got introduced to recently, I fell in love is Notion. Okay, so we adopted Notion recently for, we didn't have like a knowledge base tool to, like we were using Google Docs to have the information as document system, but we didn't have like a single place where people would find information about the company, right? And we have been using it for over a month now, and I think it's doing wonders now. Like people are just, they can come in and they can find, like from basic things such as finding the mission of the company, the vision, the product roadmap, right? What does every team do? Yeah, that helps a lot with a remote setup. Like imagine how difficult is it for someone new coming to office. So how awkward. I cannot imagine because I'm the CEO. It's very hard for me to imagine that because I know everyone, right? but I'm trying to imagine that how awkward it is for someone new to join a company and like pretty much not know where to start. It's part of the onboarding process, but it's definitely beyond that, right? So yeah, I mean, we are using dozens of tools internally, and I think that makes people's life happier and more productive. And one of these tools is Crisp as well. Obviously, we use Crisp, and like it's the easiest tool that you can demo. So I'm going to demo. You won't hear that, right? That's because I'm using Crisp. But it helps with when you have kids home, you know, they cry. It helps with that. Anyway, back to you, Rachel.
Great. Yeah, I love that you fell in love with technology, and I think that's, you know, I think as we're all building tools, we're striving for that. And that's one thing that we really noticed that you know, like the huge best practices in remote working is documentation. And suddenly there's a lot of typing, and sometimes, you know, the new, like, I'm busy, I'm working is like, you know, endless messages on Slack or Teams or wherever that may happen. And that's, you know, we're trying at Voodle trying to figure out how to bring video into that story and create a knowledge base of video. And Hassan, you mentioned, like, you know, something happens around the whiteboard, and if I wasn't there, it's just completely lost to me. But if you could quickly, you know, capture a short video, had a great brainstorm, here's what's on the whiteboard, and post that, then it's there for everybody, and it took 1 minute or less. And so we're trying to kind of bring in these great ideas that you guys have mentioned around inclusivity and the tools that fit your own personality. You know, some companies are building great documentation tools, so documenting is so core to what they do. I think of GitLab, and their massive, you know, success with remote working, and also their, you know, obsession with documentation that just really works with their culture. And so again, picking that right tool set for your culture is a really important thing to think about. Awesome. Well, next topic and last topic, and then we'll move to the Q&A, is about building human connection in this new hybrid working space. Hassan, you already kind of talked about trust as such an important thing, and harder to, you know, can be harder to create when you're not all together and going out for the happy hours. So while we're enjoying the benefits of flexible work and, you know, reducing our carbon footprint and being able to see our kids when they get out of school, there is this, you know, worry. And in fact, there was a survey of 500 global CEOs, and I think 60% ranked the #1 challenge of this kind of new remote and hybrid working world is maintaining culture and human connection. They're really worried about that. So, you know, how do you guys approach this? What best practices have you seen? And how do you avoid, you know, something Hassan, you already mentioned, this kind of 2-tier system that if I'm in the office, I'm a little bit, I have more access, I'm more central, and if I'm remote, you know, I'm more transactional. So, you know, that can happen, this 2-tier system. So maybe Hassan, let's start with you. How do you address this at Cisco, since it really is in your DNA? And also, what best practices do you see in the industry in terms of this human side of work?
Yeah, no, I love this question, Rachel, because really it's all about the human connection. And as a human race, we are social creatures, right? A lot of times we think about B2C or B2B and business models, but ultimately it really is about P2P, right? It's people to people. And we've seen this in this pandemic because everyone was obviously forced to stay and work remotely, that we ached for this human element. But even before the COVID pandemic, some of the top CEOs in the world who run the biggest companies and are big proponents of remote work, right? So I'll give an example. Jason Fried, the CEO and co-founder of Basecamp, even he believes that you should meet up once in a while, right? The frequency depends, once every 6 months or what have you, to get the team together and build those relationships on site, right? And most large organizations, the ones that are fully sold on remote work, do focus on that human element and trying to mimic that in a virtual setting. Now, of course, it's a lot harder to do when you are not face-to-face, but there are ways in which you can get that as close as possible, right? And before I share a couple of best practices, one theory here that was developed by MIT is called the propinquity effect. And that is the idea that the more you interact with someone, particularly physically, right, the more you like them, the more you trust them. And so sometimes you see office layouts built specifically for that, to enable the happenstance, people bumping into each other, the hallway, the water cooler effect, and getting them to kind of talk and share and knowledgeable information without specifically being about work, right? And so in this hybrid model, you should, as a leader, really focus on building trust with your team. And trust to me is a very simple formula. It's likability plus reliability. And to increase trust, you need to increase the level of reliability among your team, or likability, or both. And a lot of times we just focus on the reliability component, right? Do they have the right skill set? Do they have the high level of integrity? Are they proactive? So on and so forth. But we don't focus so much on the likability aspect. And to build that, you really have to put the effort to mimic what happens in an office in a virtual setting. And to me, it could be as simple as fun virtual team building games, right? Trying to kind of have some sort of a social interaction, not related to work, to build those bonds. It could be, we saw a lot of virtual coffees, for example, just a 15 minutes once a week, come in, have your coffee, have a discussion, start to build that human connection, maybe talk about a couple of things that are unrelated to your specific focus. And then one other idea that I do with my team is every week, particularly when we're first starting with a team, is I ask everyone to share a couple of pictures at the beginning of a call. It could be a status call, 2 pictures that are completely unrelated to work. It could be about their hobbies. It could be about their last vacation. It could be about something that they're interested in or they just bought, but something that they spend 2 to 3 minutes talking about that builds this person-to-person connection as well. So minor things like that, I think, are really important to really focus on that human element in a virtual setting.
That's great. Davit, how do you guys think about this at Crisp?
Yeah, well, I think it's really tough. I don't have a great solution there. We are still struggling. Like, we have tried different things and they failed. So we tried something like we call Lunch Pulse. Like every week, a random group of people would be selected, and the company would cater lunch for them, right? And they would join like Zoom calls and eat the lunch together, remotely. That was fun. I think it was working, but for some reason we stopped doing that. I think if I were to rank, I mean, that was the most successful one so far. We also tried like donuts. There's a donut app, right? That you can. We are probably familiar with that. Like every week, again, like randomly selected people would just join for like 15 minutes and they would talk everything but work. It didn't work. We tried for like a month, and I think like it's really important to understand why it didn't work. I haven't done that analysis, but I think, right. I don't know, maybe it's because it's, I don't know if it's a good idea to bring like random people together, right? Because they don't share the initial information, they share pretty much anything other than work, and they might start talking about work anyway. So I don't know, people were reluctant doing that, so we stopped that. Now we are trying the third thing, which is like there is a coffee channel in Slack. There is always, like someone who wants to, drink coffee, they share a Zoom link and invite others to drink together. Nothing, very creative, I guess, like nothing very innovative, but I heard it works. I haven't tried it myself, but I think that this, this setup where it's not forcing you to do something, right. It might, maybe the key is there. I don't know, but I don't know. So won't be able to share a lot of, innovation there, but I think there's a huge potential to build something, that can disrupt it, right? People need it, that's for sure. Companies need it. So I'm looking forward to these ideas.
Yeah. Thank you. Kupu, with Zoho, since the culture is so well defined, maybe take, I guess we have about a minute till Q&A. just a little bit about how Zoho is maintaining its culture in this hybrid scenario.
Sure, I'll try to keep it really crisp. I think not much changed for us other than literally meeting at office, because back when things were normal, we had flat cubicles. So when you walk into any floor, you wouldn't really be able to guess who's like the senior most or the VP of the organization or who's just joined. So we all sat in a flat cubicle. So you literally wear the carpet, right? You walk, you find out if the other person is available or not. Or we had multiple buildings in the same campus, so people would cycle to meetings. Obviously, you miss all of those weaving into your everyday. But today with my team, with the Zoho for Startups team, what happened was from the start of the pandemic to now, my team members have changed. You know, some of them moved teams, new people have come in. I do feel the challenge of not being able to know who they exactly are or to show yourself. Because if most of the times I'm talking about work, like you said, it's extensive documentation. You want to really download all the knowledge and experience because they have to come on board. And there's so much going on in their personal space as well. You know, you turn around and suddenly there's family and then things you have to do. So it is complex, and I don't think any tool in the world can actually solve this. Like Davit was saying, I think you cannot just bring people, you know, to a meeting and say, okay, now let's get to know each other. It has to happen in a certain flow where you start talking about work, and then gradually, you know, before you know it, you're talking about what you did the weekend. What's missing for me, especially because I have been a trainer before I moved into this, is all those cues of body language, you know, to know more about the person more than they say. You know, if one of my teammates is walking into the office and throws her car keys, and I know her morning has been really bad, so I wouldn't really bother her with that kind of cues. You know, you have to really spend a lot of time to make sure people are comfortable. At the same time, you don't start becoming their grandmother. So it's a kind of tightrope to walk right now. No tools can really solve. I think the more we stay home and get done with this pandemic, I think the sooner we can choose when we are in people mood, we get to be at office, and then we want to put our head down and create something, we just stay back home. So I think that needs to be done.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're kind of trying to figure out how do you build culture almost asynchronously now, because that is, you know, there's time zones, there's so many things, and some of our clients use Voodle actually for that purpose, where they're doing challenges, and it's like, show us your garden, show us your pets. One of our clients does Thursday Vibes, where they lip sync, and then you can go and watch all these short videos and kind of feel this connection with the team without an awkward Zoom call where we're talking over each other and that kind of thing. So very cool. Thank you guys so much. Danny's here. Hopefully there's been lots of good questions. And
questions. There have been lots of questions. We're not going to have time to get to all the questions easily. I do want to say, Rachel, a big thanks to Voodle for being a partner on this panel and a partner for running remote. It's sort of like Snapchat or TikTok for business, right? Like those moments that you cannot miss in life, that you cannot miss in business, that have to be sharing those moments that matter. I also want to tell everyone to go to voodle.com, check out their blog. Like you guys had these 5 sort of Halloween themed blog posts, which is most of us to actually wear costumes and do anything fun was really thrilling. And I surely hope that you have blog posts themed around the holidays as well. But Rachel, thank you and Voodle. I really wanted to get that in. Here's a quick question for Davit, okay? I love this too, the work from the forest idea. Did you partner with someone? Have you documented the initiative, Work from Forest?
We have not documented it. Like it all started like this. Like we were going to camping with my wife, and like while, you know, I mean, there was a group that was taking us there, you know, hiking, and like during that conversation, you know, this group mentioned that, hey, like they're wondering if businesses, there is any business in, you know, taking people during the pandemic, right? You know, there is an opportunity to do that, like work from forest. And I jumped in and said, like, yes, let's do it. we will be the first one to try it out. It's just like, I didn't know what we were entering to, but the team loved it when they, we did like 5-6 times. So yeah, there was a company that organized it. It was in Armenia.
Put a post on your blog too, okay? On crisp.ai.
Yeah, we should do that.
I've got one that came in from Juan Halu here, and he's basically paraphrasing GitLab CEO. Hassan, I'm going to toss this one to you, if that's okay. How do you ensure that career development and career opportunities aren't stunted? Teams in different offices. Like, how do you ensure investing in your employees' future in that way?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And, transparency and honesty and having a very specific outline of the career path and having those discussions up front, I think is very important. I wouldn't say that the hybrid model or working from home really disrupts that aspect of it a lot, as much as it happens in face-to-face. But I think the whole idea behind out of sight, out of mind sometimes contributes to the exacerbation of people feeling left out or feeling like their career doesn't matter. And so my advice is always to kind of just put the extra effort to, one, reward your employees with quick thank you notes, right, at a minimum. And then two, have that open conversation with them more frequently so that they don't feel left out.
We just have a couple minutes left, so I'd look for about 30 seconds or so. And it's something we talked about. Kupa, I'd love to hear from you, and Rachel from you as well, and your answer might be Voodle. But the impromptu ad hoc meetings, how do you solve around that? Some businesses use Zoom for their longer calls and say, hey, Slack, call me for something impromptu. Like, how do you solve? We'll start with you, Kupa and Zoho. How do you solve around those issues?
Oh, that's a great question. We have a fully functional app called Click that we use for chats within my team or with anybody in the organization, including the CEO or people sitting from other offices. For really formal meetings, we also have an app called Zoho Meeting. So that's like, a scheduled meeting. For impromptu ones, there's Zoho Click that allows you to do audio calls or audio calls with video calls. So it's kind of informal, where if a person is available, you quickly check and then directly
That's
call
cool
them.
that you guys
There's
have your
no
own
link.
internal tools that allow, I guess when you're a company the size of Zoho, right? But that's amazing. That's amazing that you have that solved internally.
Yeah, at Voodle, we're a small team, and we I guess pride ourselves on really good Slack hygiene. We know when to stop slacking and maybe just hit the phone and hop on a Zoom or a Slack call. And for the impromptu, of course I have to bring Voodle up, but on the impromptu side there, one of the things that we've uncovered is we miss the brainstorming sessions and the whiteboarding sessions where those, you think all the aha moments are happening there. But the reality is aha moments often happen when you're out on a walk with your dog and, just finished dinner with your family. And that's where Voodles really come in, where, you kind of will, take a quick video, share your excitement, share your idea, and then they start to coalesce, and then the meeting can happen. Where everybody's had time to digest and think about things versus okay, ready, set, go, let's be creative for the next hour. We're not always in that mode. So again, asynchronicity is kind of bleeding its way into the way that we work, even when it comes to impromptu ideas. Just because you're ready to stop by somebody's desk doesn't mean that person's ready to receive you. So by moving it to an asynchronous mode, you can kind of be more efficient about it.
Right, and I think the follow-up question, if anybody wants to jump in for 20 seconds, is just to say, why are we trying to replicate that environment, right? We have to understand that this is something totally and completely new. And just because we've been doing something a certain way doesn't mean it's always going to function that way, right? So we have to evolve.
Yeah, I think it's Darren Murphy at GitLab that says you can't just cut and paste what happened in the office and take it virtually and think that that's going to work. You have to think about what's different. And the reality is offices are like distraction factories that reduce productivity in a lot of ways. So let's try to get the best of both worlds. Hassan, I see you nodding. You have something to add.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great, I know we got like 10 seconds, but really quick, you're right. It doesn't have to be replicated. But again, I go back to the the human connection element, right? We are social beings. We ache for that connection, and it's important to factor that in.